and humid day in Orlando. The Australians, led by Greg Welch, were even hotter, finishing 1-2-3 at the World Triathlon Championships. Welch won't compete on his home turf, but Karen Smyers will lead a strong U.S. team as the favorite among the women.
Because I'm the defending champion, they're thinking of me as the person to beat, but I know it's going to take a great race on my part to win.
Last year, Canada's Carol Montgomery finished a strong second to Karen Smyers. But in Australia, she still feels like an underdog.
When you're chasing something, it makes you want to work harder, and it takes the pressure. The Americans have got all the pressure. We're chasing them.
I think Carol is a part of the C on the beach of Surfers Paradise. A little bit of Canada, right down to the A.
We have been assigned a team registration.
From the beach to the meeting room and the important last-minute instructions from the Canadian team coaches and managers, tips on training and nutrition. Team registration, now it becomes official for the 126 Canadians who traveled down under for the World. And proof positive that we were indeed here. The team picture. Say cheese. The second largest team behind the host Australians, Canada was well represented in the athletes' parade. The Canadians travel a long way, trading fall for spring in Surfers Paradise, about an hour's drive south of Brisbane, where conditions are absolutely perfect for the third World Triathlon Championships. The world's best triathletes will test themselves in the swim, on the bike, and the run. Hi everyone, and welcome to beautiful Surfers Paradise in Australia and the third World Triathlon Championships involving 906 triathletes representing 35 nations. I'm Steve Armitage along with Steve King. And Steve, the best in the world are indeed here.
They certainly are, Steve. And obviously the home crowd would love to see the Australians come away with a clean sweep as they did last year. Leading that Australian men's team, Brad Bevan, the man who placed second overall in the World Championships last year. And back on the Australian team, Miles Stewart, a young man who placed fourth in 1989 at the World Championships. A person they're all going to fear, though, Mike Pigg of the USA, a man who was here in April and beat out the likes of Mark Allen and Greg Welch. For the Canadians, our captain, Mark Bates, the winner of our national championships, and Frank Clark, the winner of our national series, should be right up there in the top 10. For the ladies, Karen Smyers of the US returning once again. She is the reigning world champion, and the lady who placed third in the World Championships, her teammate Joy Hansen. She's back with us as well. One lady who could surprise, though, Australian Michaeli Jones. She came second to Karen Smyers in a big race earlier this year. For the Canadians, of course, we were all thrilled last year with Karen Montgomery's second placing overall, and she's had a great season so far. Another Canadian who could well be up there is our captain, Joanne Richie, who recently won our national championships, and she was 12th in the World Championships last year.
Steve, you mentioned that Joanne Richie is our defending Canadian national champion. She had some interesting thoughts on the course here on the Gold Coast.
It is going to be fast, unbelievably fast. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be busy. It's going to be scary. There's going to be accidents. It's going to be happening.
My personal feelings is to come down to the run. Whoever runs the fastest will win, I say.
Stewart and the rest of the field will begin with a 1.5K swim in the Gold Coast Broadwater. Wetsuits will be allowed. The 40K bike ride will take the athletes out and back 3 times from the transition area. The 10K run course is 2 laps and is a flat run. The surf is up on the Gold Coast, but it won't be a factor for the swimmers in the Broadwater. North Vancouver's Carol Montgomery will be in the first wave. She'll be joined by a couple of veterans, Joanne Richie and Terry Smith-Ross. In the tent, trying to stay cool, another confident Canadian.
Canada's going to do it today.
Frank Clark and the elite men in a different position down under. The women will enter the water first.
3, 2, 1. We're underway. Let's give them some support on this class.
The 70 elite women are in the water. The World Championship is underway. And Steve King, why the women first? Normally we see the men first in the water.
Well, I'm really excited to see this, Steve, because it's the first time in a major championships they are setting off the women ahead of the elite men. 15 minutes ahead of them, and hopefully they'll get the profile they certainly deserve. And it may be even possible to see a woman coming across that finish line before the first elite man.
Water temperature in the Broadwater is 21.5 degrees Celsius. There is a wind. It's from the northwest. It will help them on the final leg. And we're looking at our race leader right now. That's Ann Keith of New Zealand.
And she is a tremendous swimmer. In fact, I'm sure she will want to get out there and hold on and come out the swim in first place, because when it comes to the bike and the run portions, I believe she is going to be caught fairly quickly.
And lest we forget, this is a triathlon. They start with a swim, they move to the bike, and they finish with the run. The World Championship is underway. The elite women are in the water. When we come back, the men will enter the Gold Coast Broadwater. Welcome back to the 1991 World Triathlon Championship. I'm Steve Armitage along with Steve King, and we're looking at the leading woman, Ann Keith, and the elite men are getting set to start the 1.5K swim. They are on, and who would you expect to see come into the water and try and establish a lead as quickly as possible, Steve?
Well, certainly two of the favourites, Steve, have got to be Rick Wells, the New Zealander, and Rob Mackle of the US. Others we have to watch for, of course, include the man who placed second last year overall, Brad Bevan of the US, and Garrett McCarthy, who's representing Ireland. But I'd like to see David Smith, probably our strongest swimmer, to be right up there, possibly in the top 5 or 6. Another one of the Canadians to watch out for, Simon Cassidy.
We should point out that this is salt water. It's about 1 hour after low tide. And for all of those who associate Australian waters with the great white shark, no, there are no sharks in the water at this time.
And stroking out front already, that is Richard Wells, the man who won, in fact, the World Sprint Triathlon title in Perth in 1987. He was third overall in the first official World Championship. That was in Avignon, France. But others behind there, looks like we've got a couple of Australians, Brad Bevan and Nick Croft. Nick Croft is the Australian team captain.
But look at the lead that Richard Wells of New Zealand has right now. He's a very powerful swimmer. He's also a good cyclist and a very good runner.
He is, Steve, but we haven't seen much of him this year. In fact, he's had some time out training specifically for this one. He's living in New Zealand, has found it difficult to travel much this year, but he's lost 20 pounds in training for this race.
And we are about to get the first female elite out of the water, and it will be Ann Keith of New Zealand. You see her splashing her way onto the beach. Now she has to go through what they call Thunder Alley and make her way into the transition area.
On her time, as she comes through, 21 minutes and 14 seconds. That's not a super time by swim standards, but look at the gap she's opened up as she crashes along Thunder Alley and down to where the bikes are located. It appears as though we've got a Spanish lady in second place. That's Laura Garcia. We expect her to come out. She's about 20 seconds back, but it's Ann Keith, the New Zealander, the first person to exit the water and head out onto the bike course if she can get changed quick enough. Marie-José Cosset, the Canadian, coming out in fourth place, 21:41. Joanne Richie also exiting in sixth place. And look at that time, 21:58 as she goes through, 44 seconds back of our leader.
Remember now, the name of the game in triathlon is to get out of the water into the transition area and get onto your bike as quickly as possible. You cannot ride the bike in the transition area. Ann Keith is taking the bike to a line. Now she is allowed to mount the bike and go out onto the cycle course.
And obviously the Kiwis who are here to watch this race will be happy about that, but so are the Canadians who are here today. Look at that, Marie-José Cosset had a great swim, but look who else is there. Joanne Richie, Carol Montgomery also there. She's out the water in 14th place at 22:08, and Fiona Cribb just 5 seconds back in 21st place. But there goes our leader now, out onto the first of 3 loops.
And there is Concord, Alberta's Terry Smith-Ross. She was 24th in the swim with a time of 22:27.
And Joanne Richie going out there in the top 10 comfortably, with Carol Montgomery just seconds behind her. This is great for the Canadians. They're right up there. Joanne, look at that. She's losing a little bit of time adjusting her cleats, but they're going off in great positions. This is exactly what we were hoping for. Tremendous job so far from the 4 Canadians who are right up front.
It's important to come out of the water and get onto the bike, not too far behind the leader, not to have a big gap to close up. There's the time for Ann Keith of New Zealand, the leading swimmer, 21:14. Laura Garcia of Spain was second, and Carol Pickard of Australia was third. Ann Keith of New Zealand, first out of the water, and now leading in the bike portion. And there is Bianca van Woesik of Australia in second position.
And back to the men, Steve, out front. It is still Richard Wells having a brilliant swim. And I think it's not surprising, but what is surprising is the gap is opened up over Nick Croft and Rob Mackle. Usually when Wells and Mackle go head-to-head, they come out of the water 1 or 2 seconds apart, but it appears as though Richard Wells has opened up some 10 to 13 seconds at this time.
That could be a lot of time for the rest of the field to overcome because, as we mentioned, Wells is a very strong cyclist and runner.
He is, and we're about to see the junior men and women going off, and there they are, 25 minutes after the elite women started. The third of 6 waves. Don't forget, over 900 athletes taking part today in this tremendous World Championships. 35 countries, and I'm delighted to tell you that 35% of the overall entries are women.
And of course, we're expecting big things from the Canadian junior men's elite team, anchored by Eric Milibaki. Now the men are on the final leg, and that is Richard Wells, who will be first out of the water. He has a few meters to go. What a magnificent swim Wells of New Zealand has had.
He certainly has, Steve. This is not unexpected, but what is unexpected is the lead he's already got. There he is, up already, and remember, he has to go over what they're calling Thunder Alley, looks around, checks to see who's there. He probably knows it's Mackle and Croft, and McCarthy in 4th place, but his time, 18 minutes and 48 seconds for Richard Wells. And the second placer, that is the Australian team captain, Nick Croft. He's coming up. He's about 14 seconds back at 19.02. So Richard Wells, the Kiwi, going to be first into the transition area. Others behind him, Rob Mackle, Garrett McCarthy, Brad Bevan. Looks like top Canadian will be coming out shortly, but there's the Kiwi, Richard Wells, a man who would dearly love to place in the top 3.
And as we mentioned, Wells is a good cyclist and an excellent runner. Remember, he has to run his bike to the line.
And there's the first Canadian. It is David Smith. He came out in the 11th place at 19:29. Simon Casti, 20th at 19:38. Mike Sterling, 25th at 19:43. But Richard Wells leading the cyclists out onto the 3 loops of the bike course. 40 kilometres they now have to cycle. That is Nick Croft going out in 2nd place and Rob Mackle in 3rd. There's Mark Bates coming in, 33rd out of the water at 20 minutes and 10 seconds. Remember, he is our national champion.
And remember what a great race Bates had at Muskoka, but this is a very flat course, no hills here. Now let's check the final standings for the swim. Richard Wells of New Zealand winning with a time of 18:48. Then it was Nick Croft and then Rob Mackle of the United States. But it is Rick Wells of New Zealand out comfortably in front in the cycle portion of the 1991 World Triathlon Championship. With the temperature in the high 20s Celsius, it's an absolutely perfect day here on the Gold Coast of Australia for the 1991 World Triathlon Championships. We're looking at Bianca von Wosek, the leader in the women's elite class, going well on the bike.
And Steve, she was 22nd last year in Orlando at the World Championships, and she was on that women's team that got the bronze medal. But others up there, we've just seen Jan Ripple going past us from the US, and that's Isabelle Mouton from France. And Karen Smyers, the reigning world champion, now in about 7th place.
Bianca van Wosek was not first out of the water. Remember, Ann Keat won the swim portion in the women's race, but she is going well on the bike.
In fact, Bianca was 7th out of the water, but she's a 28-year-old who's from Surfers Paradise. So this crowd there at the transition area just going nuts now as she comes to complete the first of the 3 loops. They're really excited to see an Australian leading them through. And she was here, in fact, earlier this year in April. She got a 3rd place in the Gold Coast Triathlon, and that was behind Karen Smyers and Liz Heppel.
And this cycling around the transition area, Steve, is something that's added a new dimension to the race.
It has indeed, and as the Aussie fans are going nuts because the leader's an Australian. Look who's in 2nd and 3rd places, 2 Canadians, Cara Montgomery and Joanne Richie. So we're getting really excited here ourselves. So Cara Montgomery going out into the 2nd leg of the 3 legs on the bike course in 2nd place overall with Joanne Richie just behind her.
And as the women are out on the bike course, the junior men are just finishing the swim.
And the first one to come through it is Spencer Smith, the Great Britain. He's their national champion. He comes through at 19:03. But there's a Canadian right up there, Eric Miller-Mackey, coming through in 5th place. He came out at 19:08, just 5 seconds back of the leader. And that was 2 seconds faster than Rob Mackle's time in the elite men. Going back to the elite men, still our leader, Richard Wells, the Kiwi.
And Richard Wells, a very strong cyclist. As we pointed out, he seems to be well into his cadence now, very comfortable on the bike.
He hasn't done much, as I said, this year already, but he did do a duathlon a little while ago, 3 weeks ago, and he beat out the likes of Stephen Foster, and in that race, Miles Stewart dropped out.
And that duathlon may have been what Richard Wells needed to warm up for the World Championships here on the Gold Coast. Richard Wells looks behind him and sees the veteran Mike Pigg, who enters the race with the simple philosophy of a veteran triathlete.
The main thing is, it's important to win, but the main thing is just to give your best effort. And so with this kind of field, whether you get second or first, you're going to give it your best effort because there's so much talent here. They're going to push you to your limit. And it would just be sweeter if you win it, and that's what I want to do.
Mike Pigg, one of the great competitors in the world of triathlon and going well in the World Championships. And once again, we go to Bianca Van Woesik, who is leading the women's race.
And Steve, she'll be delighted to be out front on the bike because that is the strongest of her 3 disciplines. She would expect to lose a little ground on the run, however, and I'm sure she'd like to know who's right behind her.
We can tell her that is North Vancouver's Carol Montgomery, who was second in the World Championships in Florida last year, and that woman won the race. What kind of bike course does she prefer?
I prefer having a little bit of hills on the bike course. I think that breaks up the bike a little bit. This way it might come down to a whole slew of runners, and that'll make it exciting.
It certainly will, and Karen Smyers is a very good runner.
She is indeed, but she came out of the swim in 13th place. But back to the men's race as they come off after the first loop of the bike. Mike Pigg has now assumed the lead over Richard Wells. Remember, Mike Pigg is the man they all feared on the bike course, but he has to open up a big gap. In 3rd place, it is the 20-year-old from Surfers Paradise, Miles Stewart, the man who was dropped from the Australian team last year. And hear the roar of the crowd once again. In 4th place, it appears like we have another American, and that, I believe, is Harold Robinson. So a great race going on here. Remember, there's a lot at stake, not just for the individual titles, but also for the team titles.
It would appear to me that Mike Pigg is having trouble shaking Miles Stewart and Richard Wells in the bike race.
And there's the first Canadian, that's Dave Smith. He had a great swim coming out in 11th place. He'll be trying to hold on again. He fears the run. He tends to lose a little ground there. But back on the bike course, look how close these riders are. They say they've got between 40 and 50 draft marshals out there to watch for any infractions.
And there is Bianca Van Woesik. She is leading the women's race. She has led for most of the cycle portion. Karen Smyers of the United States now being challenged by Michaeli Jones of Australia.
And Michaeli has been living in San Diego with Carol Montgomery. She's had some great races this year. She won in San Diego recently, so she does not fear anybody. But she must be ecstatic to go past the reigning world champion. Karen must be a little disappointed. She came out the swim in 13th place, and she appears to be losing a little ground.
And we know that Michaeli Jones is a very strong runner. Mike Pigg, the leader in the men's race.
And in the last race, it was in Las Vegas for Mike. He won comfortably, 2 minutes up on the reigning world champion, Australian Greg Welch, who's not competing today.
That's Mike Pigg in the lead, and we have a new rider in 2nd place. That is Harold Robinson, also from the United States.
And Harold came 3rd in their trials behind Pigg and Jimmy Riccitello. In 4th place now, Richard Wells, who's hanging in there. He's going past one of the elite women. In 5th place, Rob Mackle, who was the first American finisher last year in Orlando when he placed 6th in the World Championships.
Mackle always looks more like a bodybuilder than a triathlete. There is Miles Stewart from Australia. He is the hometown favorite. And now we go back to the women's race, and that is Bianca Van Woesik in the lead. But look who's in 2nd place now, Joanne Richie of Canada. She has closed the gap.
The lady from Kelowna, British Columbia, and national champion. Look at this, there are just seconds between them at this time. We don't often see Joanne race, but when she races, she's always right up there. And we are ecstatic. Look at the gap now. That is not too far at all as Joanne looks behind her. Bianca Van Woesik, in fact, she does about the same sort of time on the run as Joanne does, between 37 and 38 minutes. So a great battle shaping up here.
If it comes down to the run, it could be very, very close. Joanne Richie, there is Carol Montgomery of Canada. So Canadians sitting in 2nd and 3rd position in the women's elite race.
Indeed they are, but Carol has had a bit of a rough time the last few weeks. She was hit by a car 3 weeks ago in San Diego. She's got a brand new bike. She did race last weekend, however, and did very well. And that's Eric Milamaki, the junior, coming off the first lap, and he is now in 4th place in the junior men's category.
Eric Milamaki with the yellow rear wheel.
And Terry Smith-Ross coming through. She is also in the top 10. She came out of the water in 24th place. She's had a great season. Remember, she won in the World Cup in Beijing.
And there go the junior elite men out onto the cycle course. Remember, the women are on the second lap. The junior men are on the first lap. This is Bianca von Wosik leading the elite women. And look at Joanne Richie. She is playing a cat and mouse game here on the bike.
And Steve, this is really getting exciting. Fiona Cribb also coming through. Remember, she came second in the national championships to Joanne Richie in Muskoka, Ontario. And a Canadian has now taken the lead. This is really exciting for Joanne. If she can open up a gap and get ahead on the run, she's obviously going to fear Carol Montgomery. In the men's race, Mike Pigg is the man they all fear when it comes to the bike portion, but they are not letting him get away, especially Miles Stewart, Richard Wells there. We can certainly expect them to be off the bike close together now, because it does not appear as though Pigg's going to open up a gap.
The shot from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation helicopter shows us that Robinson is leading, followed by Richard Wells of New Zealand. Then it's Mike Pigg and Miles Stewart of Australia.
So as they come into transition, the crowd really getting excited. The athletes looking around, they know who's up there, and they know they're all very fine runners. Again, Mike Pigg also has been honing on this race since January of last year. Got married in December to Marcy. His wife is here to watch him. He really would love to win this for the US. They've come back with a vengeance. They want to get that team title away from the Australians. Miles Stewart is right up there too, but it's Harold Robinson leading them through to make the second exit out onto the bike course.
This could come down to a very exciting run indeed as Robinson makes his way out. There is David Smith just coming into the transition area.
David is the top Canadian, but Mark Bates has made up ground. He came out of the swim in 33rd place, some 41 seconds back, but he's having a great bike ride so far.
And there is the leader, Mike Pigg, and he is going very, very well at this stage. When we come back, cycle to run. Welcome back to our Sports Weekend coverage of the World Triathlon Championships. We've mentioned how fast and flat the course is, but there's a slight incline on the run course that could present a few problems.
Yes, indeed, Stephen. That is the hill that's behind us. However, it's nowhere near as severe as some of the hills we've seen on Canadian courses. But the athletes must remember they cannot afford to relax as they go either up or down the course. They must maintain that cadence of theirs. They cannot give any distance or time away on the hills.
It'll be a while yet before Joanne Richie reaches the hill on the run course. That comes at 2 and 7 kilometers into the run. Joanne Richie is the first into the transition area. What a brilliant ride this Kelowna, BC native has had.
She certainly has, Steve. Her time, 1 hour, 2 minutes and 9 seconds for the 40-kilometre bike course, and that's Bianca van Wosik, the Australian, just behind her. Remember, Joanne was 12th overall in the women's race in Orlando, Florida last year, but it looks as though Bianca's going to be the first woman out onto the run course. She looked like she was going a little haywire there, but now she's directed out. Look at that. So Joanne is the first woman to go out onto the run course. And Carol Montgomery, another great bike ride from her. She's coming into 3rd place. 1:02.28 her bike time. Here is Joanne Richie from British Columbia. This is really exciting. Now, can she hold it together for the run? Remember, she regularly runs about 37 to 38 minutes for a 10K course. That's 6.2 miles.
Joanne Richie will be first out onto the run course, and more Canadians are coming in. Joanne taking on water, and it looks as if Van Wosik is refusing to take on water.
And Steve, amazingly there, Terry Smith-Ross came into transition in 4th place. She did a 1:02.58 bike split, and remember, she only came 4th in our national championships. So 3 Canadian women in the top 5 so far. Carol Montgomery now in 3rd place, possibly the fastest runner in the women's field.
And Carol Montgomery, too, doing the wise thing and taking on water. There is Terry Smith-Ross making her way up and out of the transition area. That's Fiona Cribb from Saskatoon. And that is Sue Slatter. This is the first time we've seen Sue Slatter in the race.
And Sue was 39th out of the swim. She's had a tremendous bike ride, too. 1 hour, 2 minutes, 31 seconds. So she could be in the top 10 also.
There are the times, the swim and bike combined. Joanne Richie, the leader. We've got 3 Canadians in the top 5.
But out in the men's race, a great battle taking place as it has done since they exited onto the bike course. We have Mike Pigg and Rob Mackle still vying in the top 5. Richard Wells right up there, as well as Miles Stewart and Harold Robinson. I'd be surprised to see Robinson really come through and hold on, but he's a very fine marathon runner. But they've got to fear some of the other guys there, especially Miles Stewart. This is a man who's at national junior level in both running and biking and swimming, and was a national roller skating champion. But it's Harold Robinson really doing doing well and surprising everyone. Miles Stewart, I believe, they're in 3rd place. Mike Pigg right up there in 4th place. And that is Rob Mackle in 5th place. Rob Mackle, not a great runner, so he would be delighted if he can hang on and get maybe a top 8 to top 10 placing.
The Americans with 3 in the top 5. They came to Australia with a very strong team, and they're going well right now. This is Miles Stewart leading the pack into the transition area. They will go from the bike to the run.
Miles is from Surfers Paradise, so he's awaiting the roar of the crowd, and amongst the crowd is going to be his father, Cole, who is in fact his coach. And the others are going to be a little frightened here, including Richard Wells and Mike Pigg, because Miles Stewart is one of the fastest runners in the sport. Recently did 37 minutes for 12 kilometres, and he is going to be the first to dismount from his bike. And the time is going to be well under the 1 hour, around about 55 minutes for him as he comes off the bike and the first into the transition. Also in there is Mike Pigg. We've got Richard Wells, Harold Robinson and Rob Mackle all in the transition area together. So who's going to be the first out onto that run course? 6.2 miles. There's Mike Pigg and there is Richard Wells going out. Just seconds between them. And there's Miles Stewart taking on some liquids. It is getting hotter and hotter out here, Steve.
And it is very important, we emphasize it every time we cover a triathlon, to take on fluids, no matter what kind of racing you're doing, especially in this kind of heat.
And look at that, Mike Pigg's about to take Miles Stewart. This is where the timing is taken, in fact, so Mike Pigg, they'll have him as the fastest on the bike course, I would imagine, as a result of that. He is leading them out onto the course with Miles Stewart and Richard Wells just behind him, Harold Robinson. And now there's a Canadian, Mark Bates, coming in. He's had a tremendous ride too. 56.31, his bike's there. Tremendous ride from Mark. Really moved up. Remember, he was 33rd after the swim.
But right now, everybody is chasing Mike Pigg with Miles Stewart in 2nd place.
And Mark Bates from Kingston, Ontario, going out in the top 15. Mike Sterling, he had a great swim and bike ride. 57 minutes for the bike. He did about 19:43 for the swim.
And there are the standings after the bike and the swim for the men. Mike Pigg with a time of 1 hour, 14 minutes and 44 seconds, the leader, followed by Miles Stewart of Australia. When we come back, the run for home. One of the many beautiful canals in Surfers Paradise, a part of the run course for the 91 World Championships. Canada's Joanne Richie, the leader in the women's, at age 31. Will she consider retirement with a good result here?
I think it's something that I will be thinking about on the run, that this is it, that I don't want to leave anything out there. Everything goes on that road.
Everything has to go right for Joanne now. She is approaching the hill, the only hill on the run course. And Steve, she has to be very careful here.
She certainly does. This hill is located 2 kilometres into the run, so she'll be going through where she is now at 2K and again at 7K. But she is pulling away from Bianca, and Bianca appears to be struggling a little bit, but I'm surprised that Carol doesn't seem to have made up much ground. Carol Montgomery, the 2nd place Canadian, who was in 3rd place going out into the run. She does not appear to have pulled back much ground at this point, and certainly she's one of the favourites. In the men's race, though, what a race we're seeing shaping up here. 4 men now clearly out front. They have dropped Rob Mackle off the pace, and they are starting to catch quite a number of the elite women who went out some 15 minutes ahead of them on the swim. And although these 4, that is Stewart, Wells, Pigg and Robinson, are thinking about the individual title, it is interesting to note that there are 2 Americans up there. And we have to remember, in '89, the Australians and the Americans tied for the team title, but last year it all went to the Australians.
Now this is Joanne Richie coming into the transition area. She has 5 kilometers to go in the 1991 World Triathlon Championship. She is the leader in the women's elite division.
Actually, Steve, she's got about 200 metres left to make the turn, so that'll be at the 5K mark. It'll give us an indication as to what sort of speed she is on. She has dropped Bianca Van Worsik by a further 30-40 metres at this time, but Bianca looks to be okay. She's fairly relaxed, giving a high five to her teammates. And there's Joanne. Now they're giving her the yellow band to signify that she has now completed 1 lap, and they'll do that for all of the 905 athletes in the field.
Joanne Richie putting some water on her head, on her shoulders. Important to keep cool. The temperature here in the high 20 Celsius. And that is Carol Montgomery of Canada in third place. But the leader is Kelowna's Joanne Richie.
And she, in fact, won her hometown triathlon this year. But look at Bianca. She appears to be struggling, but not surprising. She's giving her all. And it was interesting to note she didn't take any water going out there. Terry Smith-Ross is making up ground. And the men now coming in, the four of them still together. This is turning out to be one very exciting race. Remember, we're missing the likes of Mark Allen and Greg Welsh.
That's Mike Pigg in front, followed by Harold Robinson of the United States. Then it's Richard Wells. Then it's the Australian Miles Stewart as they come into the transition area.
Interesting to note here, Steve, Mike Pigg has a personal best of a track 10 kilometre at 31:22, but Miles Stewart has done just over 29 minutes. Harold Robinson, the distance man amongst them when it comes to the run, and Richard Wells has done some great sprint finishes. He did that before when he won the World Sprint Triathlon Championships in Perth, Western Australia in 1987. Remember, he's also the reigning Commonwealth Games champion, so I'd love to do well down under.
It's still Pigg, followed by Robinson, then Richard Wells, and then Miles Stewart as they head out onto the road for the final 5K of this 10K run.
And the top Canadian now in the top 15, it is Mark Bates representing Canada in his third World Championships.
On the women's course, it is still Canada's Joanne Richie making her way up the hill. She is still the leader. And there goes Terry Smith-Ross about to make the turn, and she has moved into second place in front of Bianca Van Woosik of Australia.
What a race we're seeing shape up here in the men's and the women's races. We look to the left, we see Joanne Richie going down the hill, but the four leading men coming towards us now. We have Richard Wells, Harold Robinson, Mike Pigg, and the feared Australian Miles Stewart. Joanne Richie, the women's leader, though, coming into the final 1 kilometre with another Canadian, Terry Smith-Ross, now in second place. So can they take the World Women's Team title? It depends on the third place scorer for the Canadian team. Third placer right now, though, is Michele Jones for the Australian, who trained with Carol Montgomery. Fourth place, Isabelle Mouton, the French woman who came second to Carol Montgomery in the Vancouver International this year. And there is Carol. She's dropping back. That was Catherine Davis, the Spaniard, with her. And there's Bianca Van Woosik. She is in trouble.
It's Joanne Richie of Kelowna, British Columbia. She knows she has this race won. All she has to do is run comfortably over these final few hundred meters to the finish line. Joanne Richie, 31 years of age. We know that her husband Blake is watching, and we know that her two children must be very thrilled with the job that her mother has done down under. Those two children, 4-year-old William and 2-year-old Jillian. You can hear the crowd begin to pick it up now as the first woman to cross the finish line in the 1991 World Triathlon Championship is going to be a Canadian. And you can see Terry Ross coming in for second place. Joanne Richie is going to win the world title. Just a few more meters to go. What a tremendous race Joanne has won. She has won it. She's won it. The world title goes to Joanne Richie of Kelowna, British Columbia. A world title to add to the Canadian title. And there is Terry Smith-Ross of Cochrane, Alberta. She takes second place. And Michele Jones of Australia comes in for third place to pick up the bronze medal. What a tremendous race. And now the men are coming into the transition area. What a finish this is going to be. It is Richard Wells, but Mike Pigg is on his shoulder. Pigg is on the outside. They only got a few hundred meters to go. It is Richard Wells of New Zealand. Wells has the lead. Pigg is picking it up. And there is Miles Stewart, the Australian, on the outside. Miles Stewart is going to the outside. Miles Stewart takes the lead with the final few meters to go. It is going to be Miles Stewart. Then it's Richard Wells. And then Mike Pigg. It is Miles Stewart turning it up a notch now. Miles Stewart is going to win the men's title. It is Stewart. And then it is Wells and Pigg battling it out for second place. Stewart wins the world title. And it is Wells. Oh, what a close battle for second place between Wells and Pigg. Really too close to call, but there's no question that that man, Miles Stewart of Australia, winning the world title in front of the hometown fans. Harold Robinson comes in to take fourth place, but what disappointment and frustration for Mike Pigg, who has battled so well in the World Championships.
There is Carol Montgomery of Canada. She comes in to take 6th position. And there is Bianca Van Wolsik. Remember, she didn't take on any water. She is in trouble. She is not going to make it. Bianca Van Wolsik of Australia goes down. What a tremendously disappointing finish for the Australian. But what a great moment for Terry Smith-Ross. And Joanne Richie of Kelowna, British Columbia, finished 1-2. There is Sue Slatter. She finishes in 7th position. A tremendous race for Sue. She looks like she may have been bothered by an ankle injury at some point in the race.
And less than 3 minutes back of our winner, Miles Stewart, is the first Canadian. Mark Bates coming in with 12th place.
The world champions for 91, Stewart and Joanne Richie. Welcome back to the beautiful Australian Gold Coast, where just a few moments ago, Joanne Richie won the women's title in the World Triathlon Championships. Miles Stewart of Australia took the men's crown, but the junior men's title still to be decided.
And Steve, it's turning out to be a great day for Canada because the winner, the man who's coming up to the tape, is a Canadian from Victoria, British Columbia. It is Eric Miller-Mackey, the man who was 18th overall last year. He's taken the win today, 1:52.30 his time. He did 2:05.35 last year. What a performance, a world junior men's champion. And whatever happened to one of our pre-race favourites, Frank Clark? He finished off in 84th place.
Two flats.
No flats for Joanne Richie, a world championship down under. Did she think the double was possible? The world and Canadian titles in the same year.
It never once occurred to me, never. Each kilometer of the run, it slipped into my head a tiny, tiny bit more. And I tried to not think about it till 8K, and then suddenly I thought, it's a possibility.
Terry, congratulations. A 1-2 finish, you and Joanne at the finish line. Did you think that was possible?
I never imagined anything better than a top 5 finish. So I'm really happy.
A 1-2 finish for Joanne and Terry, ensuring the Canadian elite women the team goal. A truly outstanding performance. And what a moment to remember in the men's finish. Miles Stewart out-sprinting Mike Pigg and Richard Wells to the finish line.
It was pretty exciting there towards the finish. The crowd was really screaming, and it was good.
How many races have you won like that with a sprint?
Probably about 10, I'd say. I'm pretty confident of my sprint finish. I pretty much left it up until that and laid everything down on that, and it worked out, so I'm pretty happy.
What a sprint to the finish.
Yeah, it certainly was, you know. It was hard work, you know, like we were just, all the boys were just flat out, and it was, I didn't realise the finish line was that far away, and I sort of tied up a bit, but, you know, Miles had a good day.
The sprint in front of that kind of crowd, I mean, that's like the Super Bowl, Joe Montana, whatever. Having the crowd just roaring and giving everything you got, that's what you live for, being an athlete. And the only thing that could add to that would be winning, but, you know, it was 110%. I think Wells gave 110%, Miles did, Harold did, and myself. And it went 1, 2, 3, 4.
Actually, it was 1-2-2. Pigg and Wells tied for second place with the identical time of 1 hour, 48 minutes, and 22 seconds. There was no question of the winner in the junior men's category. A superb run made the difference for Eric Miller-Mackey.
I've never really had a great run. I think I had one of the best runs of my life today. It's just getting better with every race, so I'm really happy it turned out well now.
Turned out well indeed. Good enough for the gold medal and the bronze medal for the Canadian junior men's team. 20-year-old Catherine Shudden did her part as captain of the junior women's team and finished in 4th place, just missing a medal.
I tried as hard as I could out there, and there's nothing more that I could ask for. I am pleased. Top 5 was my goal. A medal would have been nice, but you know, if it can't happen, I'm satisfied with 4th. I'm happy.
The gold medal goes to Sonia Krolik of Germany in the junior women's. Catherine misses a bronze by just under a minute. 3 other Canadians would lead the World Championships down under with medals. Gold to Sherry Fraser, a 32-year-old housewife from Grimsby, Ontario. Silver to 46-year-old Diane Eller, a registered technologist from Font Hill. And bronze to 60-year-old David Bass from McTier, Ontario.
In the short history of world triathlons, the proudest moment yet for Canadian athletes. A first and second in the women's and a world junior title for Eric Milimaki.
And you know as well as I do, Steve, we came here hoping to see maybe a couple of our ladies in the top 5. We have definitely seen that. We saw 4 in the top 8, and Joanne Richie, our team captain, led them to a team victory. Terry Smith-Ross, second overall. That is the race of a lifetime for her. And as you said, Eric Milimaki, world junior men's winner. Fantastic time for him too. Came off the bike, 4th place. What a run for him. Catherine Schodek, 4th place in the women's junior category. Brilliant time for all of the Canadians. They really represented us very well here.
And of course, all this taking place in Australia. Don't forget, next year, the World Championships in Muskoka.
And one of the benefits of racing here is they've proven to themselves they can compete over any course. But they know that Muskoka course, the one used for the National Championships, they'll be back next year hoping to reclaim their title that they've taken today. And hopefully our men too will move up in the standings.
Steve, once again, a pleasure working with you.
And with you, Steve.
For Steve King, I'm Steve Armitage. So long from the World Triathlon Championships at Surfers Paradise in Australia. Returning you now to Sports Weekend Control.